report should be divided into sections. Each section, the introduction, materials and methods, results and discussion, should be written in formal English. The tense is not that important to me, but the spelling, punctuation, capitalization all need to be in order. It's like you were writing an English paper. That introduction should have its own label section, and the first sentence of that introduction should be your research question. The next 3 or 4 sentences should be some facts you've learned either on the internet or from other reliable sources about your research subject. And the last sentence of your introduction should be your hypothesis. From there, you'll begin to write the materials and methods, and although there are 2 things in this and they are really separated within this section, this is one section together, materials and methods. The first part of this section should be the materials. They should be the materials that you used. It needs to be written out in a sentence in paragraph form. You can't just make a list. You can't have a bulleted list or a numbered list. You don't need to include materials that would be common materials that any high school student would have. When we look for materials, we're looking for the things that you would need to get to do the experiment itself. But if you put in extra, it's not a big deal. Part 2 is you tell exactly how the materials were used. And that has to be written in such a way that any high school student could easily repeat your experiment exactly as you did it. So it takes a little bit of practice to get to the point where you can spell out in step-by-step form what needs to be done. But even though you're doing it in step-by-step form, you can't do it like a recipe. It has to be written out in paragraph form, again, with complete sentences. For the materials and methods, you go to the results, and the results will also have 2 parts. One of them will be a graph of the data, and almost all the time that will be a bar graph or a line chart. You want to graph the averages of your data. The individual data points aren't as important as the sum of the averages of the individual points. And then you also need, in addition to that image, that figure, a description, a written description explaining what that graph means. So the average of 15 tries was whatever that you have on your graph. It's almost always going to be a graph. Sometimes it will be just a picture, and then you have to describe the picture briefly. But it shouldn't be a table. And if you look at the difference between graphs and table in this document, that will give you an idea. Finally, the discussion. The discussion, first sentence, should again be your research question. The second sentence, you should repeat your hypothesis exactly as written. Third sentence would be your conclusion based on your data. So my research question was, my hypothesis was, and my experiments determined that my hypothesis was correct. And in the next few sentences after that, you can conclude why you came to or discuss why you came to that conclusion. And you can also discuss any possible errors that may have been included. That's only if needed. So between those, you should have a pretty decent, not lengthy, science writing is clear and concise, but a good explanation so that someone could pick up your report and redo your experiment.